I'm Elisa Parker, your host of the Wild and Scenic Film Fest Media Lounge. 23 years of this extraordinary festival. We have thousands of people that come from all over the world to our little community here in Nevada City and Grass Valley, California. I call them our everyday environmental action heroes that converge here. If you haven't been to Wild and Scenic, I encourage you to come and participate. It is one of the best festivals around, one of the largest festivals of its kind in the United States. I am so thrilled and honored to introduce our next guest. You might have heard her on the airwaves if you're in our region, Vicky Gonzalez, who's the host of Insight and is also hosting and moderating a panel as part of Wild and Scenic. Welcome, Vicky.
Happy to be here.
We're
Thank you
so
for asking me.
excited to have you. Yeah, I know for many of us, we've been listening to you for some time, so it's always fun when you can connect a voice with the face.
I hear that a lot. Yeah, I've been in Sacramento in the Northern California area for the better part of a decade, but working at Capital Public Radio and hosting Insight has really been just such a joy as a journalist.
And you were mentioning off camera that with Insight, you've been amplifying and featuring Wild and Scenic filmmakers and directors for some time now.
Oh yeah, ever since I've been host now, we're going on about 4 years. We've had Wild and Scenic on our show because that's what we do. I mean, a big piece of Insight is highlighting arts and culture and ways for people to stay connected to their community in a meaningful and valuable and fulfilling way. And what better than going to a film festival in your backyard in Nevada County? So we had them on earlier this week. Kurt Keeler, I know you spoke with him yesterday.
Speak with Kurt, yeah.
He's going to be part of the panel that I'm moderating as well.
What is the name of the panel?
It's How to Be an Activist for Your Health with a focus on cancer screenings.
Okay.
Kirk was the focus of a documentary of scaling Half Dome after receiving a stage 4 colon cancer diagnosis, which is incredibly inspiring and vulnerable. And so we're going to have Kirk on for the panel, as well as his oncologist and his trainer, who also has a nonprofit for cancer survivors.
That's fantastic. Well, also because Wild and Scenic, I mean, it's really taking the holistic approach for all of the films and more so in our panels and our coffee talks and so forth. Our events are really looking at the holistic aspect and how we're all interconnected to this in the wild world too.
Absolutely. When we were talking about it on my show, we were telling listeners, you might not think of cancer as part of a film festival that's tied to the environment, but it is all interconnected. How our relationship to the environment, our relationship to our surroundings, our mental well-being, our connection to other beings and species. I mean, it can be incredibly restorative, and there is that holistic aspect when we talk about health.
So, Vicky, this is also near and dear to your heart. You were diagnosed with breast cancer. When was that? Like a year ago?
Actually, less than a year
6
ago.
months?
I had just turned 40 years old.
Wow.
And 2 days after my 40th birthday on Mother's Day, I found a lump on my breast, and that transpired into me having breast cancer. I went through a double mastectomy. I went through chemotherapy. I had an additional surgery to remove more lymph nodes from my right arm, and I just completed radiation at the end of last year. So it was an incredibly grueling and hard 8 months, but I decided to be public about it, and I shared it with listeners because I don't have a family history of cancer. I don't have genetic markers for cancer. And this also comes at a time when cancer rates for particularly breast cancer and colon cancer, like Kirk, are increasing among people younger than 50 years old.
Right, because 40 years old, who would think?
Yeah, exactly.
And Kirk, I think he was 52
Yep.
when he was diagnosed. So it is, I mean, I really appreciate you sharing your story and having the courage to do that. And I know so often you're in the position of telling, being that conduit to share the stories of others.
Right.
What was that like to put yourself in that limelight and to be sharing your own personal story in a way that's so vulnerable?
Oh, nerve-wracking.
Yeah, I bet.
100%. I much prefer being in your shoes right now, asking questions as opposed to answering them. But I was more than happy to do it. Oftentimes, as a journalist, I ask people to be vulnerable, and we have intimate conversations. And I think that makes us all better as a community because it widens our perspectives, helps us understand the human experience better. So why not be a part of that as well when I'm
Right.
going through something pretty
Vicky-
extraordinary.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you. Yeah, I'm sure many of us are appreciative. But also just having friends and family who are going through something similar. So thank you for doing that.
You find out how common it is.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. I mean, it is your personal mission and your key talent and gift and sharing personal stories. We are in such wild times right now. Can you just speak to a little bit about why this is so important, like Wild and Scenic, and sharing our personal stories, and how that also just helps shape the culture we're hoping to see?
I think it's pretty easy right now to feel disconnected and to feel alone. And these festivals, going to screenings yesterday, it really reminded me to pause and to listen and to reflect about how we are all connected to each other, and not just humans, but to our environment and to other species. And I think festivals like this are a wonderful opportunity to pause and have that moment for reflection, because understandably, life is really busy. It's relentless. And it's easy to get swept up in all of that and just get into your headspace. And I think it's incredibly valuable to pause and reflect in that way.
How has your own personal experience with sharing your story of having breast cancer, serving as like one of the really key radio hosts in a significant way? How has it shifted how you're showing up now?
It was honestly one of the, and this is going to sound weird because I went through cancer, one of the best experiences I've ever had in my life, because when you're doing this show, I mean, it's very easy to just focus on the work that we do, producing it, doing the research, trying to have meaningful conversations. But when I went public with my cancer journey, I realized the reach that our show has because of the emails we received, because of letters and gifts and people letting me know that they ended up getting a mammogram and they ended up getting screenings because of me sharing my story. And it really just gave me a deeper knowledge of how we are all connected to each other, even if we don't know each other, even if you don't know how I look like, but you listen to me every day.
Right. Well, even just connecting on the heart level too, and being in that vulnerable sense. I think in this role as the host, like you said, you're often in the position of being that conduit to help share the stories, right? And then we separate ourselves from that. And what you realize that you are this vessel that is enabling people to open up and share. So I'm imagining that even more so, it's probably even deepened some of your conversations and experiences with your guests.
Yeah, I think it humanizes me as well.
Yeah.
And then I get to see the humanity in other people.
Right. So you went to some films yesterday,
Yes.
which I love. You were staying in one of our local hotels at the Holbrook.
Yes.
What did you see, by the way?
Well, of course, I watched Kirk's documentary,
Yeah.
and so that series was Wild at Heart. And so we met people who do extraordinary things, from rafting to Kirk scaling Half Dome, to just a lot of individuals who really kind of remind you to stay connected not only to nature, but to challenge yourself. And I found myself feeling incredibly inspired. And then in the evening, I love the outdoors, so my husband and I watched another screening of short films for outdoor enthusiasts. And it really gave me moments to just pause and immerse myself with, I want to get back out hiking, basically. I left,
Yes.
especially for the last year, I haven't been as active as I wanted to be. So taking in all of these outdoor short documentaries, I went to bed just really with this new purpose of wanting to just get back out there.
Yeah, I think that was inspiring for me too, especially we were saying living in Brooklyn now, and being outside and just being conscious to be integrated in the natural world, just taking care of ourselves, which you're going to be talking about on the panel. Real quick, what do you want to say to everyone about why this festival is so extraordinary and why people need to show up and participate in this?
Wild and Scenic Film Festival is one of the most valuable parts of our community in Northern California. Even though there are lots of counties, I mean, for myself, I drove from Sacramento. It's just a 1-hour drive. And I think it's important to get out there and to listen to people and to take in other people's stories. And what a better way than a film festival? It's such a meaningful part of being part of Northern California.
Thank you, Vicky. And what would you say to everyone? Like, what would your message be right now? Why it's so important to share a personal story?
I think it's easy to feel disconnected from humanity, with how news can be so relentless and our relationship with news and even social media, but there's not really an on and off switch. And I keep saying this word pausing. I think it's really important to pause and listen to people, because we all have a lot that we can teach each other if we do that.
So true. Thank you, Vicky. Vicky, the panel is at 2:00 today at City Hall. It's our Activist Center of Wild and Scenic. Thank you so much, Vicky Gonzalez, who is amazing and insights on every morning. Monday through Thursday.
Noon, rebroadcasted at 7 p.m. And you could also listen to the podcast on Spotify or Apple.
Great. All right, Vicky Gonzalez. I'm Elisa Parker. It's Wild and Scenic. We will be right back.